This crow just watched a man light a fire. He learned how to smoke. He snuck a match and quickly struck it across the wooden door and lit it, and threw it straight onto the newspaper on the sofa. In an instant the mansion was ablaze. As the guards went to put out the fire, Crow managed to fly into the basement. It turns out he did this to save the dream god who was imprisoned here. Raven started to crash into the glass, but suddenly Raven was killed by a shot, even though he was the god of the dream world. Since he was trapped in this real world spell, there was nothing he could do about his pet's death. The dream god was very upset, because the one who trapped him was only a third-rate sorcerer. 10 years ago, the sorcerer wanted to summon the Grim Reaper through a forbidden art to resurrect his dead son, but he accidentally summoned the god of dreams. Although he failed to resurrect his son, but he took away the 3 treasures of the dream god. He lost his power and was trapped in the boundary for 10 years, and the sorcerer gained a lot of wealth from the dream god's treasures. He even married a wife 50 years younger than him, but when he found out that she was pregnant, the sorcerer was suffering from the loss of his son. He called a doctor to abort the child on the spot. The woman couldn't take it and quietly left the mansion, but she took with her the 3 treasures of the god of dreams. The sorcerer was furious. He approached the dream god and said he could release him to find his own treasures, but on the condition that he doesn't kill his whole family after he comes out. The dream god remained silent after hearing this. The sorcerer was afraid. He had to ask his men to strengthen their protection and never let him out. The sorcerer died a few years later. His youngest son always felt sorry for the dream god. He hoped to gain his forgiveness and made the dream god promise not to hurt him, but after 80 years, the dream god never answered him. He couldn't trust the man who killed his raven. The youngest son decided to give the dream god one last chance. If he doesn't agree, he would never come back to the basement again. Seeing that the dream god didn't say a word, he had no choice but to leave the place in a merciless ride. But what he didn't notice was, the wheelchair's wheels accidentally cut a gap in the boundary. The dream god entered the guard's dream world through the gap in the boundary. The guard saw himself on vacation at a beach, but the beautiful woman in front of him changed. She turned into the dreadful dream god. He rushed to shoot, but that's exactly what the dream god had in mind. The bullet shattered the glass in front of him. The dream god was finally free after a century of being trapped, and this time he would take back everything he had lost. The dream god found the sorcerer's young son and punished him. He would be trapped in an eternal nightmare, but he would never die. And when the dream god returned to the dream world, he was shocked. The place was in ruins. It turns out that during the 100 years of the dream god's disappearance, people speculated that he had abandoned the dream world, so most of them chose to leave this place. Only his most loyal servants were left in the palace, but it doesn't matter. The dream world itself was created by the dream god. All he had to do was restore it. But suddenly the debris in the air scattered. The dream god fell to the ground. It turns out that because he lost his 3 magic treasures, he couldn't fully utilize his power. But the treasures have been lost on Earth for over 100 years. The servant suggested that he should seek help from the god of fate or the god of desire to locate the treasures. But the god of dreams just said lightly that if they wanted to help, they would have come to the basement to save him long ago. It seems the only way now is to turn to the all-powerful and all-knowing goddess of fate. And the broken dream world had no more tributes to offer to the goddess. The dream god had to come after the dream world and try to enter the dreams of others to steal their treasures. His servants advised him that this was a very dangerous thing to do. He couldn't be sure if they were dreaming a beautiful dream or a nightmare, but the dream god didn't care. He sprinkled fine sand into the sea, and his clear reflection appeared in the water. But the god of dreams was pulled under. He concentrated and succeeded in exercising his powers. He stole the crossroads of fate from a farmer's dream, and in the dream of a movie buff, he got the god of wishes. Then he entered the cage and seized the serpent, the symbol of life and death and rebirth. The tributes were collected. The goddess of fate was summoned by him, but the goddess of fate was not so easy to please. All the questions asked by the dream god, the goddess gave only half answers. The first magic sandbag was sold in London, and the last buyer was a magician. His name was Constantine. The second helmet was traded by a mysterious man. He traded it to the devil for an amulet, so the helmet fell into the hands of a demon in hell. The third treasure, the ruby, was passed from a mother to her son. The dream god was just about to ask where the woman was. The goddess told him that the number of questions had run out.